Are the signs screaming that today is the day to learn creative financing? Stay tuned. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of NoteSchool TV. Every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time, we bring you the most amazing content and the best, the smartest guests in the world, right? And today is no different. So we'll bring our today's guest on in just a minute. But before we do, a couple of favors to ask you. Number one, make sure and hit that like button. Yes, hit that like button. Make sure, and if you are not already subscribed to NoteSchool TV, to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then boom, hit that bell notification so that you will be, made aware every week before we go live. So let's talk about a couple of other things. Number one, make sure and hit the and send us some comments, right? We love getting comments from you. We love getting your feedback so that, again, we know what you're thinking. We want to hear your thoughts about the show that we're in that day. So please make sure and send your questions and comments there. And if you would like to learn more about what we do at NoteSchool, just go ahead and go to noteschool.com/TV. noteschool.com/TV. All right. So we are going to bring the news in a little bit today. And our guest and I will talk through that. But let's go ahead and bring on today's guest. And this guy he's a dear friend of mine. He has been with NoteSchool. He's been with NoteSchool and Eddie longer than I have. And he's just, built a great business along the way. Just an all-around great guy, great family man, Mr. Ben Haught.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning, Benny. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
By the way, he doesn't like to be called Benny, but he lets me get by with it, right?
Ben, Benji, Benny, any form of Ben, I'll answer to. So.
There you go. So Ben and I have been friends for quite a while, and he and I are instrumental these days in doing the 3-day classes that we offer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to go to a master class, Ben. And that's an expensive class to go to, right? You can actually go to a 2-hour master class for the lump sum amount of zero, right? And you'll hear Eddie, and you'll hear our chief market officer, Max Keller. They'll do a 2-hour presentation, and we'll tell you how to attend one of those in a little bit. But you do that and you decide to move on and go to a 3-day class, you'll get to spend 3 days with Ben and I. and our other team members. Let's qualify that as well. So Ben, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll jump in and you can tell us about Hamelmeyer. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on today and why the signs and signals are saying you better learn creative financing. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll give you the bullet points. I mean, I bought my first investment property in 1999, and then did the traditional route, right? Started off with rentals, wholesaling actually, then turned into rentals and rehabs and on down the line, and then got caught up in 2008, like a lot of people. And that's where actually what introduced me to Eddie. A mutual friend of Eddie and I introduced each other, and been doing the note space predominantly ever since.
So Ben, what do you tell everybody what you do, with NoteSchool as far as what we do at a 3-day class and so on as well?
Yeah, sure. So, and it's funny, you had said that long, and I was like, well, how long? And, throughout the last couple of years, it's been interesting on the topic that we're getting ready to talk about is the market cycles and the ups and the downs, right? Mm-hmm. And so really my role is kind of more onboarding as people are coming to that 3-day class, just to kind of find out a little bit about them and say, what is it that you're actually struggling with, right? And there are all kinds of different responses, and NoteSchool can help basically kind of plug those inconsistencies or deficiencies. And it's really interesting kind of talking with people to, number one, see their background.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny, you have it. What's your expression, right? We're all more
alike than we are different. Yep.
And what's funny is that could not be more true. So everybody thinks they're in a unique situation, right? And come to find out, no, we're actually very, very similar, just different shades, different. And so we end up kind of talking people through how to NoteSchool can solve those problems and introduce them really to the note space, which is really where, when you talk to people, where everybody wants to end up anyway, right? Being the bank. So
that's it, and Ben has an amazing team that he directs, and Tiffany and Matt and Dwayne, and they're great, and you guys come to a 3-day class eventually, then you'd meet those guys as well. So Ben, you kind of, I wouldn't say it was never a stumble into, but you started a company, a business that, wow, you spend about 10 hours a month running, right?
Yeah.
That's an old joke between Ben and I. First time he said, well, I only spend about 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month running Hammelmeyer. We go, Ben, people will never believe that.
Yeah.
Tell us about Hammelmeyer.
I was going to say, there was a little bit of upfront, right? I mean, so people need to hear the whole story. There was some upfront time that was involved. But yeah, once everything was up and running, it's a side business. Now, predominantly, just for clarity, because people kind of think that Hammelmeyer's my predominant role or career or business, right? And no, I'm just a note buyer, essentially. I mean, I'll sell one occasionally, but for the most part, it's just I'm a note buyer. As a side business, which fell in my lap, kind of, the old joke I say, one of the very few that I can deliver, was that when people used to say, hey, what is it that you do? I would say logistics, right? Because coming out of 2008, I was highly over leveraged, like most people, got caught up and had to hit that reset button. And, so I would say logistics. And, after probably literally 1,000 times, I had one person say, well, what does that mean? And so I ended up having a conversation with Eddie, and Eddie, as he always does, said, "Hey man, let's make that little tweak and let's add some more business to what you're doing." And so a doctor friend of mine who I've known for a long time asked me, "Hey, what is it that you do?" I told him about the note space. He ended up getting involved and buying a substantial, 7 notes, but put some substantial money out there because he had a problem. And the problem is that he had a large rental portfolio, and small portfolios can be managed, but when you have a large portfolio, those issues, they compound, right? So I just started getting to him. He was getting close to retirement. His doctor friends kind of found out about Note Space, and we just kind of formed an LLC that, again, like you said, runs in the background for less than 10 hours a month. Sometimes it's really low, like we're talking 2 or 3 hours, and other times it's more like 9 or 10. It just kind of depends on what the market's doing and what how we plan on attacking it.
Ben, we just got through doing a 3-day class on Saturday, and one of the things that we do continually, I mean, we talk about the whole, is really about being the bank. And you always bring up the fact that well, who has the biggest buildings in town? And of course, those are the banks. Right. But one of the other things that we talk about a lot is that when you're getting into the note business, you do the work once, right? Mm-hmm. You do it once, and then it's like you collect payments for years. And versus if you're doing a fix and flip, you got to keep doing one. Every time you finish one, you finish the next one. You just start the next one. If you're doing wholesale, it's the same way. If you're doing if you're a landlord, you're doing the same thing, right? You've got to continually do that. So it's doing the work once, and then you just continue to replicate that. So let's bring up the slides here, Ben. This one, this first slide is pretty interesting, right? And it says, well, what does it say? Ben, that's a big number, isn't it?
That is a big number. You know, it's funny. I don't think people realize how big of a number that is.
I know, right? So
I'm sure
that is, well, I think that's $1 trillion, isn't it?
1 trillion. Yeah.
1 trillion has likely exited the U.S. banking system as America risks global economic isolation. And Hank Paulson is the former Secretary of the Fed, right? He was running the deal or the Fed during the Great Recession.
Mhm.
Very smart man. And Ben, this is all to do with the as well. People aren't trusting banks as much as they were. People are. We knew that there was billions and trillions of dollars that were going somewhere, but people are starting to kind of pull out and saying, what do I do? And this is not only in the US. This is well, it's not only United States citizens pulling money out of the US banks. So what do you think about this?
You know, it's interesting, Joe, talking to investors again across the US, right? If you go back and rather than just list them all out, I mean, go back, people, they flocked to rentals, right? And then they flocked to rehabs, and then they flocked to crypto, and then they flocked to land and multifamily. If you look at it historically, investors seem to flock, to what the next shiny thing is, right? Problem is now they don't know where to put it. And that's the conversation that is there, because multifamily, cap rates just don't work anymore. Even businesses, if you track businesses and kind of how they interact with the economy, and some of them are with the cap rates, they're taking 35 plus years before they get back their money back, right? Just because, so investors across, no matter what level, hobbyist investor, all the way up to BlackRock. BlackRock a couple months ago, they were hurting a little bit too, right? Remember?
Yeah. BlackRock, Blackstone, those guys, they're having a challenge. So, Ben, when we talk about the creative financing coming to the rescue, it's because of things like this. As money comes out of the system, and one of the other thing that you say, well, what keeps you up at night? Well, there could be many things, but one of the things is that not only you've got $1 trillion here, but what you have is you've got a lot of this money is coming out of the smaller regional banks, and it's getting plugged into the biggest banks, the top 5 banks, JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup and Bank of America and Wells Fargo, and I can't remember the other one right now. But when you have less, when there's less competition, then it just makes these top 5 more powerful, and they can do what they want, right?
That's it.
It gets too big to fail, like that was the motto back when Paulson was running the Fed. That's
right. The number one reason that keeps me up at night, Joe?
What's that?
Being awake. that came to me.
That one, Ben.
No, all jokes aside, that came to me.
There's kind of a joke around NoteSchool that Ben can't tell a joke.
I can't. Right? So I was like, hey, finally one that came my way. That said, you're onto something, right? The investors I talk through across, and it's not just me, right? It's all of us, investors that keep in touch with each other. We all hear the same thing, right? They're scared. They don't know what's going on with their money. Money keeps, it's still there. It's just being moved around, but people just don't know where it went, and so that's the chase that we're talking about.
That's right. And Ben, so you go to this, and I just pulled this up. This is from yesterday. Now, I know that if you look today, in some of the other feeds, you would see that the average 30-year rate is about 6.3 or something like that. Understand, guys, when you see those rates compared to the rates that I'm showing you, those are people that have 800 plus credit scores.
Yep.
everybody else, this is kind of where it starts. Then you got a $350,000 property, which is kind of the average property, is what they say. You put $60,000 down, 20% down. You got a $300,000 loan, and if you've got a 7 to a 719 credit score, there's your rate.
Yep.
And you say, well, I see sometimes it's a 5.5% or whatever it is. Guys, that is an advertised rate. It does not include the APR, the cost of getting that loan.
Or the cost of paying it every month, Joe.
Of paying it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you and I, we show people, when we compare this, a year ago, let's say 1st of April, late March of last year, you could still get a 3.5% loan.
Yep.
And you compare that on that $300,000 when you're looking at 7.28, 7.3, and you're looking at 3.5, you're looking at about $800 a month difference in payment. And then it becomes the affordability issue, right?
That's right.
And the people that can get this too, you have to have a pretty tight debt to income ratio. All of your revolving and installment debt, including your new house payment, can't exceed like 34 to 35% of your gross monthly income. And again, Ben, we're talking about a solution here of what we can do with creative financing. We're not saying, okay, it's all gloom and doom. We may as well hang the phone up and move on, right?
That's right. To that point, Joe, you and I forget what I should have looked, but I know it's above 70. But if you take the totality of all the credit card debt in the U.S., it's above 70%, and so that number is skewed big time. And so that's another factor that we need to, and that's again kind of what you were saying, leading into one of the solutions there, and a big solution, quite frankly, is the seller finance realm.
And I just wrote on the screen there, Ben, we are free, everybody does freak out and say, oh my goodness, it seems that a lot of folks, we all pretty much have a short memory. I think we say this we certainly say it every class we do, and every time we do talk about this on NoteSchool TV. The 50-year average interest rate is 7.77%. It's not 3%. That was an anomaly, was it not?
It was. Yeah. And think about all the, one of the biggest, and I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, but one of the biggest things I hear is, people, one of the tactical approaches they have, right, is that they're going to buy a house and for appreciation. And I'm like, appreciation doesn't work in some markets, right? In fact, it only really works in one market with the escalation that's going up. And so that, again, the more that happens, the less buyers that can really affect that. And it affects the investors' numbers as well.
That's right. We look at this slide. This is the latest mortgage credit availability index. And Ben, this thing right in here is where it fell off the charts. And that was kind of the start of the pandemic. And what this means is here's your baseline here. So that means that if you go back, this is the index. It really says this piece right here where this fell off. And look, when it fell, and it didn't just stop there, it fell. And then in here, this just says that about 40% of Americans that would like to go out and buy a new house, there's no credit available for them.
Yep.
Ben, we call them penalty box buyers, right?
That's it. Yeah.
It's not, they're not, they're self-employed gig workers, contract workers, folks that, well, like you and I and Eddie and, and so on. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. We own businesses. Ben has a business. I have my own business. We, contract with NoteSchool and so on. But we are those folks that are just, what really bugs lenders is the stability of the income. You may make $1,000 this month or zero this month, but you may make 50,000 next month, right? So that and the fact that your tax return legally, you get to take deductions that a W-2 employee can't take. So anyway, that's that huge gap that we talk about. That's where seller financing really kind of it resonates. And then Benny, talk about this for a minute.
Oh, yes. I remember you sending this to me, and I think it was the second one. Americans are worried over rising mortgage rates and the unemployment outlook, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, what number are we actually looking at? Right? Because you talk to one person, it's great. The exact same number you talk to another person, it's bad. The great thing about seller financing is whether it is an up market or a down market, we can help solve that person's problem. Going back to what you were just saying a moment ago, there's what's that rule? Is it 3 years that they have to do? Like a self-employed guy has to have a forensic audit, a party vendor come in and do that.
Yep.
So there's a story real quick, 30 seconds or less, that a mortgage friend of mine was looking at, and on paper or on his returns, it was like 150 grand that he made, right? But when he turned in his W-2s when he had the paperwork to turn into the mortgage company, it looked like he only made 60 or 50 or whatever.
Right.
It's like half, right? And so, he couldn't get, but he had more, he could put down 30, 40%. I mean, he had a large, but he still couldn't get the loan. At the end of the day, and the biggest thing that the underwriter was asking was was because he was self-employed, it's the unemployment outlook. So it's a big key. People don't, I think, realize, people as far as the general mass public, they don't realize how it affects it. And there's very few investors that kind of have an answer for that. So.
Yeah, and when a lender's looking, they're looking at stability. They want a W-2 borrower where they can go in and say, okay, you make this much every month. Yep. And so that's a real challenge. And then, but when we're talking this 35 to 45%, it may be 45% now. Great credit.
Yep.
Great income. Great money to put down. But again, because they're outside the box a little bit. And you know what? As these, and everybody's saying that I read that regional banks they're having a tough go of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got to look too that a lot of the regional banks are the ones that are providing credit and loans for commercial properties, smaller commercial properties. And as that pool gets smaller, and with commercial failures, because in office and all of those things, you have less places to go to get credit. And then this one, right? This is outlook for credit access hits a record low while inflation expectations jump. Look at this number right here. 58.2% says it's really much harder for them to get credit.
Oh, yeah. That goes back to, well, it would be kind of hard to get credit when 70+% of the balances out there are out. I mean, that's everything affects in layers on top of each other, right? So as one issue is there, kind of talking about the sophistication of the investor, right? That's really what we're getting ready to talk about.
Right.
So in a market where, as rates go up, and again, like the slide before said, the Fed is expecting that. Well, that just brings seller financing to the forefront. Well, how many investors, Joe, have we seen that they own, without being as curt as I'm about to sound, they only know so much. And so they get the deal right to that point and they fail because they don't have more tricks in the bag or know how to maneuver the financial modeling that's behind it, right? So the more sophisticated you become, the more options that are there, and you can convert that deal. It's a big thing.
Well, Yeah, the folks that we know that are knocking it out of the park. We had Jeff Watson, who is our attorney at NoteSchool, and we use him for a lot of different things, and he's just an amazing guy. And we hear from Jerry Green and these other smart folks in the space, and they'll tell you, right? They'll tell you that you've got to know this. You've got to know creative financing in today's market. And you can't just be a one-trick pony or just one way to go do a deal. If you don't have those multiple ways, it's going to be really tough. You talk to more people about this as I do, and you've talked to guys, over the last couple of months that we're doing wholesaling 150 houses a month, right?
Yeah. And right now, see, that's another thing too. Just because you have high volume in previous years doesn't mean you have that level of sophistication to approach deals, right? When all your deals kind of look the same, and you just happen to have the money to back it, because of the volume that you have, the hobbyist investor, there's a difference in mentality and a difference in approach. The hobbyist investor, which is the number one investor that's out there, again, when you go in and ask for zero down and all, well, you're only going to get so many. You have to up the game, especially in this market. And the more kind of contrarian approach that I like, the more that you can come in and separate yourself from the pack and jump to the front. That's why it makes it seem where it's so easy for us to close more deals. It's just because we just kind of separate and we can go up to a very high level and punch it through.
Well, Ben, that's funny because you know what our motto is at NoteSchool, right? We're going to show you how to close more deals.
Well,
a couple more slides here, and then you and I can we'll give. We're talking about gloom, but we are interspersing the light at the end of the tunnel here. So I found this last night, Ben, and I sent it to you. Zillow's chief economist says short-term tactics like house flipping won't work anymore. Use these 3 simple methods to build real estate riches. And well, when we look at these, we you and I kind of smile at them because buy and hold to build equity. Is it time to buy and hold? And when you buy and hold, you become that right there, right?
Yep.
And I've got something I'm going to flip up here in just a second. That the next slide, which kind of throws some stuff in the face of that. But here's really what when we're teaching, when you're learning creative financing, when you're learning how to buy a deal from a burnout landlord, and then and get that cinched up with creative terms, and then you find yourself a penalty box buyer. This 40% of underserved home buyers out there, and you sell that house either on a wrap, or if there's a bank loan underneath, a sub-2 wrap. You've done the work once, but you're creating monthly income for you. Money now and monthly income. You've put somebody in a home that otherwise would not have been able to buy a house. And then the other side of that is this landlord. Well, let's look at this. 8 million people age 18 and up aren't caught up on rent payments.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And by the way, that number is $20 billion.
Yep.
That's past due rent. You say, well, it is what it is. And so having those, being the landlord, well, let's look at this. I hate to talk about being a landlord here, but here's the states with the largest share of people behind on rent payments. There was another slide I had here. I can't remember what it was. I think I may have erased it. But the thing of it is simply this. Rentals. Oh, it's with rent prices going down, Ben. You read that every day that rent prices, people are having to pay 30+% of their rent, of their income for rent.
Yep.
That doesn't include your car payment and your grocery bills and your cell services and your internet and all of that. That's just for rent.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a mutual friend that does he works for a property management company, but he does kind of the background stuff, right? He works in the background. And one of the most illuminating things that he said lately is on the topic which you're talking about. He says that, on paper, it looks like they're hitting these numbers, but in actuality, because of all the different factors that are involved of job and location, of course, there's some variances there. But he said most of the time these people get in and they can do it, but there's just one change in their life, and that messes up all the numbers.
And Ben, you and I both know that things change on a dime, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And there's I should have made a slide. Bankruptcies are up about 20% year over year. People are feeling the crunch, and I'm going to drop the slides off now, and we'll kind of tell them a little bit about what this really means as far as yeah, we've said all of these things, but Ben, what's the light at the end of the tunnel when you're talking to somebody and you're pre-talking to them and what your team is talking to folks about. What's that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I mean, the ultimate answer is we solve the problems, right? And we get paid for it. Now there's two big takeaways that I would say from here. Number one, that's why there's a lot of opportunity to help people. Number one, right? That's the underlying commonality amongst most of people that we interact with here, especially in this ecosystem. So helping people, number one, but the money that's there, we're helping them out of a bad situation. And every now and then you get that person like, oh, you need to do it for free. I'm like, well, there's things that we get to do that banks and other institutions can't. So we are helping them out. It just so happens we're making money in the process.
Yeah.
But we also don't have the large overhead that banks or hedge funds or these private capital funds have, which is what allows us to kind of do what other banks and stuff wouldn't do. So again, it just goes back to what's the purpose, and the primary objective that you're after. If helping people and making money is it, well, then seller financing is the way to go, because we do help a lot of people out of bad situations.
Yeah. Ben, when we look at this and we kind of wrap it up as far as what we really are doing, you guys heard me say burnout landlords just a minute ago, and you say, well, what in the world's a burnout landlord? And to put Eddie into that, it's not burned out. It's not BURNED. It's BURNT. Guys, it's burnout landlords. Now, Eddie's not on today, and I'm not picking at Eddie, right? If he was on, Ben and I would be picking at him. We do it. We converse. We're on a Zoom call or whatever, many hours. Oh, yeah. But here's the thing: you've got 8 million people, and that are behind on their rent still. You've got $20 billion that landlords are owed. They're somewhere between the average burnout landlord is somewhere between 65 and 95, literally. They've owned these properties for a long time, most of them. So they've depreciated the value of that property down to zero. So they're going to have recapture depreciation. Then they're going to have capital gains. They wanted something that was passive, Ben, when they got into it, but then they got into it and it was like, okay, I'm so far into it now, I can't turn around. No. And so they're just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. They wanted passive income. And then that's where we come in, right? There are 16.9 free and clear single family rentals in the United States. Everybody thinks, Ben, that the BlackRocks and the Blackstones and all of the Colony American Homes, they own most of the single family rentals, but it's not true. They own only about 5-10%. Right. Most of them are owned by hobbyist landlords, like you were talking about. So we're and 10, almost 11 million of those 16.9 million properties are free and clear.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we can go in and craft a creative deal where we buy, they sell, we buy. They do have to pay their taxes, but they can pay them over installment sale. It's listed as an installment sale, IRS, and they pay their taxes as they're receiving the gain. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've helped them do that. We've gotten this property, and now we're going and putting somebody in this, a deserving buyer. And we not only get paid today, but we get the difference, the arbitrage between those two numbers, and we get paid for the next 30 years. You do the work once, and that's what we teach people to do. Is that kind of a fair assessment, Ben?
A very fair assessment. Yeah. One thin layer of paint at a time, right? One deal stacked on another deal, stacked on another deal.
Yeah. And that's that's what this thing is really all about. We have a joke, Ben, that you do one of those deals, and you see one, and you go, "Wow, I'll take 10 a year of those."
That's right.
It's like layering income. So Ben, final thoughts.
Well, I mean, again, kind of recapping what we've talked about. I mean, the market, while it looks on the forefront like it may be grim, it's a great opportunity. And then again, it's cyclical markets, right? It's nothing new. They're just that's out there right now. Now, it may be different ingredients, that's there, but we certainly have been here before in the sense of the issues we're dealing with. And the more we have in the back pocket, the more conversions we can do with deals. So we're certainly not being dismissive, but we just recognize the opportunity.
Right. And Ben, it's not just about creative financing. The other phenomenon of the market void right now that we're looking at, which is a topic for another day, is non-performing loans and so on. So if you know this part of the business, if you know what you know, there is a huge bright light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train, right?
That's right.
So we would love to have you guys in one of the master classes that Eddie and Max do, Max Keller. And just if you want to go to a master class, it's a 2-hour master class. It's free, right? Just email, write this email down. Go ahead and do it right now. info@noteschool.com, info@noteschool.com. And in the subject line, just put in there, attend master class, and we'll have somebody get back with you, and we'll get you in the next master class. But you know what? It's going to expand on what Ben and I have talked about, and then we'll give you an opportunity to go to a 3-day class. But it's the first step in learning whether this business is for you, right? So, you can't beat the deal, Ben.
That's right.
And Eddie and Max do a really good job of taking that and breaking it down into little pieces. And guys, it's really the cat's meow, as they used to say. So Ben, I guess that's going to wrap us up this week. Again, just say your goodbyes, and we'll wrap this up today.
I would just add this, Joe. It might be the cat's meow, but I also believe it's the bee's knees. I think that's the updated version. So,
Ben, that's 2 today.
Hey, we like having fun, and we have a lot of fun during our classes. So
we do. I think in order to be successful, and that's just part of our ecosystem, right? Is that and these guys, Ben, you get to meet great, amazing guests every time we do this, right? And I would encourage you to just take the step, go to a master class, info@noteschool.com, attend a master class. We'll get back with you, get you in the next one, and the rest will be history. Benny, thank you so much, my friend. Talk to you in a few hours, and we'll see everyone next week on next week's episode of NoteSchool TV, 11:05 Central Time. Bye, everyone.